Iran just put ballistic missiles directly into the single most critical military facility on Israel's northern border. WW3 base in Safed, the headquarters that commands every soldier, every artillery order, and every defensive line against Hezbollah, just took direct fire. In the same wave, missiles hit Tel Aviv, Beersheba, and Kiryat Shimona. Iran claims 4 American military bases across 3 countries were struck simultaneously. This was Wave 80, 26 days in, and it just changed everything. To understand why striking Dado base is different from every other missile wave before it, you need to understand what this facility actually does. This is not a storage depot or a communications relay. This is the operational brain of Israel's entire northern military campaign. Every troop rotation into southern Lebanon is authorized through this building. Every armored movement on the Golan Heights is coordinated here. Every territorial defense unit stationed along the Lebanese border receives its orders from this exact location. 2 frontline combat divisions operate under its direct command. When the IRGC described it as the facility responsible for commanding and deploying forces along the northern borders, that was not battlefield propaganda. That was a textbook accurate military description. And the timing of this strike is not coincidental. On March 17th, Israel launched a fresh ground invasion into southern Lebanon, an operation entirely dependent on WW3 base for command and control. Defense Minister Israel Katz publicly stated that Israel intends to hold a security zone stretching all the way to the Litani River until Hezbollah is completely eliminated. Finance Minister Smotrich went even further, calling for the Litani to become Israel's permanent northern border. That is not a defensive military posture. That is territorial expansion. And Iran just put missiles into the nerve center running it. Here's what makes this moment genuinely unlike anything seen in this conflict so far. Israel is not fighting one war right now. It is fighting 3 simultaneously, and the command hub for one of those fronts just absorbed a direct strike. From the east, Iran is firing ballistic missiles in coordinated ways. From the north, Hezbollah has been launching continuous rocket barrages into Israeli territory. Air raid sirens have been running almost without pause across northern Israel for days. At least 1 woman has already been killed in those northern attacks. And to the south, Gaza remains completely unresolved, still demanding significant Israeli military attention and resources. 3 active combat fronts. 1 central command facility just hit. The significance of that is hard to overstate. Dado base was the architecture holding Israel's multi-front response together, disrupting its ability to function, even temporarily, creates a coordination gap that all 3 adversaries can exploit at the same time. This is precisely what a multi-front pressure strategy looks like when it starts to work. Most coverage of this conflict treats raining missiles as a single category of threat. That framing is dangerously wrong, and the weapons used in Wave 80 prove exactly why. Iran deployed 2 distinct missile systems in this attack, and understanding what each one does explains why Israel's air defense network is being pushed past its design limits. The Sigil is a 2-stage, solid-fuel, intermediate-range ballistic missile. It stretches roughly 17.5 meters long, weighs approximately 23 tons, and delivers a warhead between 500 kilograms and 1 ton. Its operational range runs between 2,000 and 2,500 kilometers, and Iran claims it can reach Tel Aviv to 500 kilometers, and Iran claims it can reach Tel Aviv from the city of Natanz in under 7 minutes. The critical detail is the solid fuel propulsion. Unlike liquid shield systems that require extended fueling sequences on the launch pad, sequences that are visible to satellites and vulnerable to preemptive strikes, the Sigil fires from road-mobile launchers with almost no preparation window. It climbs on a ballistic arc, exits the atmosphere, then re-enters at hypersonic velocity. That terminal re-entry profile makes ground-based defense networks extremely difficult to coordinate against. The K-bar Shekin, designated the Kornshar 4 in its newest variant, is an entirely different weapon. It is liquid-fueled, roughly 13 meters for the motor section plus an additional 4 meters for the warhead assembly, with a launch weight between 19,000 and 26,000 kilograms. It carries the heaviest confirmed payload in Iran's arsenal, between 1,500 and 1,800 kilograms. Its Arvand engine runs on hypergolic fuel that can sit in storage tanks for years, cutting launch preparation to approximately 12 minutes. It carries a mid-course navigation system that corrects its trajectory well outside the atmosphere, which means electronic warfare jamming during the terminal guidance phase does not work against it. But the feature that has genuinely reshaped this conflict is what this missile carries inside. And that's where the real story begins. The Khyber Shikan can be fitted with a cluster warhead carrying up to 80 individual submunitions. That single capability has broken the fundamental strategic logic that Israel's entire layered air defense system was built on. To understand why, you need to walk through what actually happens when one of these missiles approaches its target. The missile travels its ballistic arc inbound toward Israeli territory at approximately 7 to 10 kilometers of altitude, Well within the engagement envelope that Israel's arrow system is designed to handle, the warhead separates and releases dozens of individual bomblets simultaneously. Each of those bomblets carries between 2 and 5 kilograms of explosives and begins falling independently across a wide dispersal area. Dr. Uzi Rubin, the former director of Israel's Ballistic Missile Defense Organization, stated it plainly: after the cluster opens, it is too late. The arrow system must achieve a kill on the parent missile before it crosses that 7-kilometer threshold. If the arrow hits the missile above that altitude but fails to score a clean, direct, head-on kill, the bomblets can still deploy successfully. Iron Dome was never built to address this kind of threat. Its entire design architecture targets short-range rockets at lower altitudes. It has no realistic engagement solution against dozens of small, fast-falling submunitions scattered across miles of airspace in seconds. And here is the decision that reveals exactly how serious this problem has become. The Israeli Air Force has now publicly acknowledged choosing not to shoot down certain cluster bomblets, specifically to preserve its stockpile of short-range interceptors. They are not failing to intercept. They are choosing not to, because the math of defending against every single submunition would exhaust their reserves faster than the conflict is producing resupply. Since the opening of this conflict, the dominant narrative pushed by U.S. and Israeli officials has been that strikes inside Iran have significantly degraded its missile launch capacity. Israeli military spokesman Efi Defrin claimed Iran originally planned to fire hundreds of missiles on the very first day, but only managed to launch fewer than 100, with daily averages dropping to roughly 10. That narrative has now been demolished by the operational record. The IRGC has executed 80 separate attack waves across 26 days. That is more than 3 waves per day on average, sustained continuously without pause. Iran is not depleting its inventory. It is actively evolving its weapons mix toward platforms that are harder to locate, faster to deploy, and nearly invisible to satellite surveillance. The introduction of the Zulfikar solid-fuel missile in Wave 76 and 77 on March 23rd, followed by the continued deployment of the Sajil in Wave 80, shows a deliberate and calculated shift toward road-mobile, solid propellant systems that require no fixed fueling infrastructure, operate from smaller and more dispersed convoys, and leave almost no detectable thermal or logistical signature for reconnaissance satellites to identify before launch. The IDF confirmed that as of March 20th, 365 ballistic missiles had been fired toward Israel since February 28th. Of those, 285 entered Israeli airspace. Approximately 270 were intercepted, producing an overall interception rate above 90%. That number sounds like success until you look at what the remaining faction actually did. More than 24 confirmed cluster warhead strikes hit populated areas, creating over 100 separate impact sites. 2 construction workers were killed in Uhud. 2 residents in their 70s were killed in Ramat Gan. 6 people died in a single missile strike in Beit Shemesh on March 1st, one of the deadliest single attacks on Israeli civilians in this entire war. Nearly 200 people were wounded in a single strike on Arad on March 22nd, after air defense systems failed to intercept at least 2 missiles from the Ghadr missile family. On the same morning that Iran was preparing Wave 80, President Donald Trump stood before reporters and declared that Iran is totally defeated and militarily dead. He stated that American planes are flying over Tehran and that Iran cannot do a single thing about it. The statement was absolute, unqualified, and delivered with complete confidence. Hours later, ballistic missiles were landing in Israeli cities and striking 4 American military bases across 3 countries. The IRGC spokesperson responded directly on video, saying the strategic power you boast about has become a strategic defeat, and adding, if you could escape this, you would have already. This is not a minor messaging inconsistency. There is now a 26-day documented gap between what senior officials are declaring at podiums and what is physically landing on the ground in real time. Every single day that gap persists without a corresponding shift in military reality, it compounds. It raises a question that has no comfortable answer. If the declared victory does not match the operational picture, then either the intelligence being briefed to decision makers is wrong, or what is being said publicly is not what decision makers actually believe. Either possibility carries serious consequences for how this war gets managed from here. Before February 28th, Brent crude was trading at approximately $72 to $87 to $87 to $87 per barrel. Since the conflict escalated, it has been swinging between $100 and $110 down, with an early spike pushing near $120 in the first 2 weeks. Dubai crude hit an all-time record above $150. Oman crude settled above $152. Oman crude settled above $152. Commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, a waterway that carries roughly 1/5 of global oil and LNG flows, has been heavily disrupted since early March. The International Energy Agency described this as the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. Gulf oil production has dropped by at least 10 million barrels per day. The IEA released 400 million barrels from emergency reserves, the largest such release in its history. The United States committed 172 million barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Prices have barely moved in response. Now apply that economic backdrop to the interceptor equation, because this is where the arithmetic of this war becomes genuinely unsustainable. A single Iranian ballistic missile costs between $200,000 and $500,000 to manufacture. A single Arrow 3 interceptor costs between $2 and $3 million. A single TH-8 interceptor runs $12.7 million each. During the 12-day war in June 2025 alone, the United States burned through an estimated 150 TH-8 THAAD rounds at a total cost exceeding $1.9 billion. Consuming approximately 14% of the entire American TH-8 THAAD stockpile in under 2 weeks. The Pentagon is now moving to expand that production, but manufacturing timelines for precision interceptors are measured in years, not months. Israel's daily defense expenditure is currently estimated at up to $200 million. The secondary economic damage is spreading well beyond the energy sector. Analysts warn that urea and nitrogen fertilizer prices could roughly double if the conflict continues, because disruption around the Strait of Hormuz is choking a major share of the global fertilizer trade. Brazil, which supplies nearly 60% of global soybean exports, depends on fertilizer shipments that transit that same strait. California gasoline crossed $5 per gallon during the second week of March. This is no longer a regional conflict with contained economic consequences. It is actively repricing the global economy in real time, and the pressure is accelerating, not stabilizing. 80 waves in 26 days. Sagil missiles reaching Israeli territory in under 7 minutes. Cluster warheads releasing 80 bomblets across 10 kilometers of airspace that no defense system on Earth can fully neutralize once they deploy. Database, the single command hub controlling Israel's entire northern front, directly targeted and struck. Interceptors being consumed years faster than any production line can replace them. And the nation that was declared militarily dead on a Wednesday morning launched its 80th ballistic missile wave by Wednesday night. The question the world now has to answer is not who was winning this war, and is something far more sobering. What happens when the side spending $3 million per interception runs out of interceptors before the side spending $300,000 per missile runs out of missiles? Nobody at any podium has answered that question yet, and the missiles keep coming.